Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. So I'm going to give you 5 brief battle reports today from my experience at the Twin Sentinels tournament, which was held in Cardiff at the end of June. It was my first tournament for Warhammer the Old World, and I was taking the Orcs and Goblins Nomadic Waaagh, which I'm having loads of fun playing with at the moment. I've had very few practice games before this tournament with my list, and so I was really just launching in there, get 5 games over the weekend and just see how I do with the Nomadic Waaagh, and then hopefully make some tweaks and changes before the next tournament that I've got coming up at the end of July. So if you don't know it, here's my list. So it's led by Waaagh the Despoiler. He's an Orc war boss, he's got a great weapon, he's on a war boar, he's got the bedazzling helm and the effigy of Mork, which is a nice tasty little combo which normally makes him 60s to hit by most things, because he's actually bumped up to weapon skill 7 from being in the unit with the big red flag, and so he's hard to hit. He's got a 3-up save, durable, he's my war boss, he's moving forward with the rest of the unit, and so he's giving his buffs, his Waaagh ability as well, which is very helpful, and of course the the rallying cry and the leadership and everything else. We've got Rob, who's another Orc war boss, mounted on Rattlesnake the Wyvern. He's got the Ogre Blade and the Talisman of Protection. I've got Udura, an Orc big boss. He's got Cavalry Spear and Charm Shield, and he's the BSB, and he's rocking the glowy green amulet. Now this comes from, if you saw my last battle report, I got caught out with my main unit, or with the miasma from the illusion deck, and I couldn't charge with my main unit, which was just devastating to my whole battle plan. But the glowy green amulet just seems like such a fantastic item. Basically, any spell cast on your unit with the bearer of this item, you can just dispel it automatically on a 2-up. If you roll a 1, the item explodes and does a bit of damage, but I think that's well worth the risk. Typical Orcs and Goblins style. I've then, my 4th and last character, I've got Festus, the Goblin Oddnob. He's a level 4 on the Law of the Waaagh, and he's got the Idol of Gork, which gives him an extra 3-inch range on his spells, and he can re-roll a casting attempt once per turn. So my main unit is 16 Orc Boar Boys. They are big uns. They've got Thinking Hat on the Champion. They've got the big red raggedy flag on the Standard Bearer, and they've got all the upgrades, right? The Cavalry Spears, the heavy armor and shield. And this is the way I'm enjoying playing the Nomadic Waaagh at the moment. It's kind of a Death Star build, I suppose you could say. So I've got the BSB and the General in that unit. The BSB and the General both have the Waaagh ability, so on a charge once per game, they can each call a Waaagh and give you those reroll 1s to hit, and the +1 combat res. When they charge in, they've got all the rules kick in: the Furious Charge, the Chopper's Rule, and everything. You also get to make use of this Nomadic Waaagh special rule called Hit 'em fast and hit 'em hard, which is kind of 2 rules in 1 really, because it gives you the impact hits rule, which is a very nice rule because you're using the strength of the warboar and with AP -1, so it's a bumped up impact hits rule, 1 impact hit for each boar that makes it into base to base, and you can give them Vanguard. Now I haven't actually given them Vanguard for this competition, but I might think about it for the next one if I can squeeze in the points. I'm not really using any of the other special rules for the Nomadic Waaagh, because they're all based on the Goblin Wolf Riders. Not particularly enamoured with the Goblin Wolf Riders in this edition so far. They kind of seem, well, they've always been weak, right? But they're a bit mixed in terms of what their actual role is. They don't seem that versatile anymore, principally because they're impetuous, right? I mean, they've got rules like Fire and Flee, Feigned Flight, you can give them as upgrades, but if they're impetuous and 50% of the time they're going to go charging off somewhere, how are you going to use them in that role for, firing their bows and harassing the flanks and staying out of combat if 50% of the time they're going to go charging in? I suppose you could keep a Black Orc near them somehow, but first of all, in a Nomadic Waaagh list that doesn't work anyway, because the Black Orcs don't have that special rule that quells impetuosity. But also, even in a regular Orc and Goblin list, your Wolf Riders are going to be running around the board. How are you going to keep a Black Orc near them to keep them in line? They do have the Chariot Runners rule, which can be pretty cool when you use them with the Goblin Chariots in the skirmish formation. That could be quite fun, but at the moment, not particularly sure how to use Goblin Wolf Riders in this edition if they're all impetuous. Perhaps you just give them the spears and light armour and let them charge in, right? Put them in a line, let the wolves and the goblins do a bit of damage when they hit, and then take it from there. I've got a unit 10 and a unit 5. So the unit 5 is just a sort of chaff unit. The unit 10 has a standard bearer. So in this tournament, the Twin Sentinels, there's 5 different missions, secondary objectives for each game. I'll go through the missions one by one when I go through the games. So the maximum you can get on the 20-0 system is a 16-4 win without the mission, and there's a 4 tournament point swing if you get the objective and your opponent doesn't get the objective, right? So your 16-4 with the mission becomes a 20-0. And for that to score the mission, you need scoring units. Now, scoring units need to have a standard bearer and be of the minimum size for their unit type. So for fast cavalry like Goblin Wolf Riders, it needs to be 10 Goblin Wolf Riders. So I've taken an extra unit with a banner, because otherwise I've just got my Boar Boys with the banner. So I've got 2 scoring units now. It's not that good. I mean, there'll be a lot of opponents that will be running around with 5 scoring units or something like that. But at least it gives me the option of being able to score with another unit other than my main unit. I've got 3 Goblin Wolf Chariots, I've got 2 Snotling Pump Wagons, and 2 Orc Boar Chariots. Now, lots of chariots, that's what the Nomadic Waaagh is about from my point of view. I'd like more, actually. But as I said, with this tournament, I've got to take the scoring units. So I've gone for as many chariots as I can fit in with that restriction. In my view, with the Nomadic Waaagh, it's all about having an Orc War Boss as your general, right? Because the stipulations in the Army of Infamy composition list are as follows. If you take a Black Orc War Boss as your general, you can take a Black Orc Boar Chariot in core. Not that, I don't think they're particularly useful, those Black Orc Boar Chariots. Perhaps I'll come back to that later. But if you take a normal Orc War Boss as your general, then you can have a unit of Boar Boys in core. Now that just opens everything up, really, because the only other core options you have with the Nomadic Waaagh is the Wolf Riders and the Wolf Chariots. Now, unless you're going to have loads of Wolf Riders and loads of Wolf Chariots, you need something else in your core. And being able to take a big unit of Boar Boy Big Guns in your core is just fantastic, because then it just opens up. You've got a lot more freedom as to what else you take in your list then. And this is an open list event, right? So looking through the list before the event, I'm seeing that there's hardly any dragons. There's lots of people taking quite, I don't want to say tame lists, but just kind of a little bit restrained. Like, the fact that you had to have scoring units with banners in order to play the missions, and the missions are so valuable, it just prevented people from taking just sort of characters and big nasty units, and there was it prevented a lot of the madness that I've seen in other lists online, like 2 dragons in the same list and stuff like that. So you just didn't have any of that real madness out there. And as I said, there was only a few dragons in the whole tournament. And yeah, so it was a long drive down to Cardiff on the Friday night. I was very happy to have a beer and some food and catch a bit of the Euros tournament when I arrived. Ready for that early start at 9 AM, which was a bit early for me, 9 AM on Saturday and the Sunday, but we had 3-hour games, which was good. I think particularly as the game's relatively new, people still learning the rules here and there, and having that 3 hours to play your game was invaluable. And as you'll see, in the first game I didn't even get to finish even in the 3 hours. But yeah, that's the list. Looking forward to playing 5 games of the Nomadic Waaagh, and let's get into it. So game 1, I was up against Doug's Empire, and his list was as follows. He had a general on Griffin with a lance and the white cloak. He had a level 4 wizard with the Lore Familiar on Elementalism with the Armour of Tarnus. Captain BSB with Dragon Bow and Silver Horn mounted. Lots of mounted units, like my army. As you can see, there's kind of 2 sections to his army there. He's got lots of cavalry there, 2 small units of knights with great weapons, and the models were modelled with great weapons as well, so it looked pretty cool. 1 unit of Inner Circle Knights, and I think the champion or something had the Wizarding Hat, and 2 units of Outriders, and then the sort of artillery park on the far side there, where you've got an engineer, you've got a small unit of archers, Well, sorry, the archers were skirmishing. There were two small units of skirmishing archers. There's a unit of handgunners, a hellblaster, and a great cannon. And the scenario was that we had to pick a terrain piece outside of our deployment zone to get by the end of the game. And we both ended up picking the same terrain piece, right? So with the terrain piece, it's this wood sort of in the middle on my left, his right. And we're both after that objective, right? So we've both got sort of fast-moving armies, although he's got a kind of artillery park in the corner, and the rest of it's fast-moving, and all of mine is quite fast-moving. And it kind of looked like a good matchup for me, at least initially, because his army is sort of split in two from this piece of impassable terrain there, the building. And I was thinking, well, I can sort of occupy the guns and stuff with my chaff, tackle the knights with my main units, and then hopefully just swing around and get that objective in sort of turn 4 or 5, and perhaps not really have to do much with that artillery because I've got lots of sort of chaff I can sort of throw that way. However, not everything went to plan, as you're about to find out. So I failed quite a few impetuous tests early game. And it worked out all right on my right flank, right? So the scouting archers there, they pulled my wyvern up the right flank, turn 1, and then I moved him. They ran away, but then he caught them with a massive charge. I then used the Hand of Gork to move him even closer on turn 1, so he's actually threatening my right, the Empire's left flank, straight away on turn 1. Just out of arc of all those knights there, so my wyverns just zapped up the flank. The best thing about this army from a tournament point of view is that because I've got loads of drops, I'm out deploying everybody, all my opponents. I've got so many units that I'm able to just put my wyvern down last once I've seen where everything else has gone. So my wyvern was right out on the flank, and he's now after turn 1, and a massive charge. And a Hand of Gork. He's now really threatening that army from a really nice position. The scouts on the left pulled my Wolf Riders forward straight away as well into the wood. Not exactly how I wanted to go down because now they're going to get shot at by everything, but that's the way it is. I made a massive mistake putting my pump wagon in front of my boars because turn 1 the pump wagon rolled a 3 for the random movement. And so wasn't able to actually get out of the way of my main unit. The Wolf Riders, of course, are rapid. They can get out of the way easily, but just a stupid thing to do, just forgetting that my pump wagon was a random mover, only 2d6. And so, you know, they roll low, I can't get out of the way. And so I'm sort of restricting my own movement of my main unit. But, you know, it is what it is. It can't hurt that much to be a bit cautious anyway with all of the knights poised in the middle. So my wyvern going up the right flank, it looked like a great position initially, but actually once he declared a charge on turn 2, that kind of allowed the Empire to flee sideways from my charge, whereas if I was more in the front they would have to flee back, and because they're quite close to the back of the board that would be more risky for him and force him to hold instead of fleeing. But yeah, so he fled the charge initially. I think his general on the Griffin charged across the centre into my Wolf Riders, fled. And failed to get into combat, so his general on the Griffin is out of position as well, and those goblins would later roll a leadership 6, fail a leadership 6 test on 4 attempts and end up fleeing the board. So the wyvern, as I said, it ended up hitting the inner circle knights, and they pass all their saves, and he just bounces off them, and it was, you know, he's rocking the ogre blade, and obviously the wyvern adds a few attacks as well, and I was hoping that would go quite nicely for me, but he just saved everything, and so I end up bouncing off, and then the subsequent sort of counter charge by the knights breaks the wyvern and causes him to flee, so that what looked like a really advantageous position from my wyvern on the flank just turned into an absolute fail as he bounced off the knights, and then they end up just causing him to flee. Luckily they don't run him down, and he's able to rally and come back into the fray later, but it was really touch and go there for a second. I thought, oh god, you know, for game 1 I've taken this big war boss on a wyvern and he's just fluffed. I lost a few of the chariots to the cannon fire. The boar chariot in the middle fails a charge and get knocked out by some of the outriders. My boars finally make it into combat on turn 3, kill some outriders. They get flanked by some archers, and they end up sort of swiveling around to face those archers, and then breaking them and pursuing quite handily towards the objective, towards the wood, which makes a difference in the final game. So it finishes a 16-4 to the Orcs, but really mainly because I got that objective, and you know, without it, it would have just been a 12-8 finish, right? So it was the getting the objective that made it more a convincing win. But very kind of cagey first game, and against an Empire army that I guess, underestimated from the beginning. It kind of looked like it could be an easy win because I could just smash my boars and wyvern through that bunch of knights on one side and come back for the objective. But anyway, started the tournament with a win. So game 2, when I was up against Chris's Orcs and Goblins, and he's got a funky set of miniatures here that I haven't seen before, and also I think he said he makes his own MDF bases, and he had this cool kind of display board for his army where all the bases fit neatly into it in a display. So I'll get a picture of that if I can. He did very well in the competition. I think he finished 3rd overall. He had 4 war bosses in his list. So he had a Black Orc war boss with the same combination as me, with the -2 to hit. He had an Orc war boss on board with the choppiest chopper and the +1 toughness full plate armor. I can't remember the name now, but so toughness 6 war boss with the choppiest chopper. He's got a Goblin war boss on a giant spider and the battle axe of the last big Waaagh. Just fantastic to see that item actually being used. And then a Night Goblin war boss with the Walloper's one-hit wonder and the flying carpet. So he's got 4 war bosses in the list. Just the one level 1 Goblin Shaman with the ruby ring. There's an Orc BSB on a boar as well. And then small unit of Black Orcs, 2 small units of Night Goblins, a unit of regular Goblins with a banner, who are in ambush for this mission. I'll talk about the mission in a minute. And 2 Doom Divers. As you can see in the deployment there, he's all sort of spread out. So from left to right, as you can see, you got 3 out of 4 war bosses and the BSB on the left flank with a unit of Night Goblins. So all these characters are outside of the units, right? And then in the middle, there's a line of Black Orcs. Then there's a kind of bat-looking thing, which is the Night Goblin war boss on flying carpet. And then you move on, and you got the boar boys, the Snotlings. Sorry, I forgot about the Snotlings. Small unit of boar boys, small unit of Night Goblins, and the Doom Divers at the back. So he's kind of really spread out across the board. And there isn't really any sort of main unit, any main hub for the characters. And that was a bit difficult for me because I didn't know sort of what to point my army at, in the sense that, you know, what am I aiming for here? You know, where are the points, you know? And obviously he's done that deliberately because I've got the big unit and the big wyvern, and so he wants to be able to outmaneuver me. So the scenario we're playing is the breakthrough scenario, which means the player with the most scoring units in your opponent's deployment zone at the end of the game wins the objective, and you can hold units in reserve to come on your short board edge, right? So he's got those goblins coming on later game as a scoring unit, and he's got more scoring units than me, right? So this is going to be a bit difficult, and I can sort of see that right from the deployment, because, you know, how am I going to just get to grips with all these scoring units and prevent him from getting banners in my deployment zone? It's going to be pretty tough. That, and he's just out deployed me, right? He's just seen where my boar boys have gone, or where they can possibly go, and he's stretched out his army to get lots of drops, and then he's put his characters all on one side, just out of units, and of course they've all got the 360 charge arc. It's going to be hard for my wyvern to pin them down, because yes, my wyvern's fast, but, you know, he has to face something and then charge it, right? So that's exactly what happens. So I've got a smattering of chaff in the wyvern on the left, which just aren't able to get to grips with those characters, and they just sort of run rings around my wyvern and end up killing it late in the game. My right side is more sort of unguarded and fell to the boar boys on sort of turn 2 or 3. I managed to chase those Black Orcs off the middle of the board with my boars, but, you know, not enough points to make a big difference there. Yeah, it was just a really sort of frustrating game for me, because, you know, wasn't really able to get to grips with the enemy in a way which I can actually say, look, there it is, let's charge it and go. So all I really got the points for was some Black Orcs and and a Doom Diver and bits and pieces. So I finished a 17-3 loss. So I've got 1 win, 1 loss so far. It's funny, on the day I'm recording this, the FAQ has just been released, and you're actually not allowed these 10-man units of Night Goblins with 3 Fanatics anymore. You've got to have just 1 Fanatic per 10 Night Goblins. So it'd be interesting to see how Chris adapts his list for next time. But really sort of impressed with that, to see that you could just sort of go for a pretty generic Orc and Goblin list with a bit of everything. Snotlings as well seem pretty good in this edition, because he's got 5 bases of them there. Their skirmish formation, their movement 5, which is ridiculous how Snotlings are faster than Orcs. But yeah, their movement 5, and of course their skirmishing, so they can go where they want, and they just target things, you know, so they're pretty tough. Having the war bosses just flying around and zapping around on the boards and stuff with a different set of magic items is just really cool. So yeah, impressed with that army. It was a good game, enjoyable, but a bit frustrating from a gaming perspective. Game 3, and I'm up against Ian's Warriors. Now, he's got a Chaos Lord on Chaos Steed with the Mark of Khorne. You've got an extra arm, 2 favours, and the Headsman's Axe. So he's killing blow. He's rocking like 8 attacks by turn 2. And just really nasty Lord. In a unit of 5 Chosen Knights. There's an Exalted Sorcerer level 2 on Demonology, sort of skulking at the back there. 16 Warriors of Khorne, 10 Marauders of Tzeentch, 5 other Chaos Knights, 3 Dragon Ogres, a Shaggoth, and a Hell Cannon. Not faced a Hell Cannon before in the old world, but it's not as good as it was in previous editions. It's actually killable in this edition, so I was keen to sort of get to grips with that with my war boss with the Ogre Blade. The mission was the Hold Center Ground, and as you can see by the sort of deployment there, he's got everything sort of in the middle, and so have I, because that's how you play this mission, right? So you've got to hold the center ground. At the end of turn 2, the player with the most scoring units within 6 inch of the center marker gains a point, and the person with the most points at the end of the game gains the objective. So the terrain should actually help in this game, because there's those 2 big units of impassable terrain which kind of funnels everything towards the middle. I want everything towards the middle because I've got a big Death Star unit, right? So I just want to charge and bundle through everything. There's nothing too nasty in the list. Obviously the Chaos Lord is quality, but you know, if he fluffs his attacks once, I could just beat him on combat rares. The Shaggoth and the Dragon Ogres are strong, lovely old school metal Dragon Ogres there. I should always point out, lovely models. But they're, you know, deployed further back. The Chosen, of course, are drilled, so you've got to be careful with them that they don't, you know, they have the ability to sort of squeeze through a small gap and charge, right? Because they can still, they're 6-man units, they can still go 3 wide and still be in combat order. So I'm, you know, wary of the threat that they pose. But I'm liking the fact that, you know, everything's sort of bundled in the middle, and I can, in theory, fight the Warriors and the Knights before I fight the Dragon Ogres, because there isn't enough space for all these units to fit in. Got this Hell Cannon on the hill, so you know it's going to have a couple of pot shots at me before I get it, but you know it is what it is. So turn 1, the Chaos just surge forward and move on to the objective straight away. I managed to get a turn 1 charge into those Chaos Knights. Now they just stepped forward too far, really. I'm reroll charges with Warband, so long bomb charges I tend to go for them. I'm overrunning in destroying those Knights with all the impact hits and all the Tusker charge and all the rest of it. Overrun into the Warriors. Still inside the charge arc just of the Lord's unit, right? So on turn 2, the Marauders join the fray on the left-hand side into my boars, and the Lord with his Chosen Knights join the fray on the right-hand side. Now, I've got my War Boss on that right-hand side, and he's -2 to hit. Now, obviously, his Chaos Lord has loads of attacks, and he's killing blow, right? So I was a bit worried that he would get off the double 6, because obviously he needs a 6 to hit, and then he needs a 6 for the killing blow. So he did get a hit, but obviously that second 6 didn't come. And my charge from the boys just sort of decimated those Chaos Warriors. And I won combat. Everybody fell back in good order, including the Chosen Knights with the Lord. And then on the next turn, I'm trying to bundle everything towards the middle of the board here to get this objective, and there's just not enough room. So I've got all of these wolf boys and chariots and everything just sort of waiting to get to the middle of the board while my boar boys career through the middle into the chaos units. My Wyvern going around the right there eventually makes it into the Hell Cannon and kills it after a couple of rounds of combat, but not before the Lord has charged back into the boar boys again on turn 3 it will be. And this time he gets that double 6 and manages to kill my general with a killing blow and just lops his head off. And yeah, that was a bit of a blow, but I ended up winning combat anyway because, of course, I'm slashing through all of these marauders. I was quite lucky because the warriors fell back in good order, but not far enough to actually make it through the other side of those dragon ogres. So I was kind of able to still keep the dragon ogres out of combat, even though that Shaggoth was able to get in there. And still able to sort of win combat, and it ended up being just an annihilation really, because the warboar just went through those 2 infantry units. The Shaggoth fell back, they smacked into the dragon ogres, and so I had my big sort of Death Star unit just careering through the middle of the table, just wiping out everything in its path, and while my Wyvern went after that Hell Cannon. So, but yeah, it finished at 20-0 to the Orcs. And so it was nice for me to finish the Saturday with a big win, and yeah, it was back to the hut, out for a meal and a beer, and do it all again on Sunday. Game 4, and I'm up against Tim's Ogres. Lovely painted army here. He's got a Tyrant on a Stonehorn with the Tenderizer. Just absolute beast of a unit there. It's on a big base. He's got a ton of wounds. He's got the Talisman of Protection and the Kin Eater, big name. Just not really sure if I have anything that can deal with that really, so I'm going to try my best to avoid it. Thankfully it doesn't fly like a dragon, and I do have an abundance of chaff, so hopefully I can keep it busy. There's level 4 Slaughtermaster on Illusion with a Cauldron in a unit with 6 Iron Guts, which you can see on the right hand side there. There's a Bruiser BSB, he's in a unit with 11 Bulls in the middle, 4 Mournfang on the left and 2 Saber Tusks on the right. So he's only really got 5 units. And versus my army, which has got more than double the amount of units, I kind of felt confident I could sort of keep the Mournfang and the Stonehorn busy on that left flank and get the charge off in the middle with my boar boys. And basically that's exactly how it went. So turn 1 was just really quick. The ogres moved forward. Orcs turn. The orcs moved forward. Back to the ogres again. And on turn 2, he got a charge from. Well, I gave him the charge with my chariot there to keep his Stonehorn busy. So the Stonehorn goes into the chariot and overruns forward, a little bit out of position there, or a little bit, ahead of the ogre battle line. And then on Orcs turn 2, I just go for it. So I get the Wyvern. And a chariot into the Mournfang on the left, and I get the Orc boar boys up into the bulls in the centre, and basically I just wreck face, and the boar boys go through those bulls into the Iron Guts. The Wyvern just hacks up the Mournfang, which is quite a good match-up for it with the D3 wounds on the Ogre Blade, and within that turn 2 was just devastation really, and most of his army has been destroyed after the end of turn 2, because I actually had a goblin chariot on that right hand side going into the flank of his Iron Guts, so I was able to get a sort of cascading combat with my boar boys and go through 2 units in one turn. And then we're just sort of looking at the board after turn 2 thinking, dude, that couldn't have gone better for me, couldn't have gone worse for you. And of course, most of my army is now past and out of charge arc of his Stonehorn. And I sort of said to Tim, look, to be honest with you, mate, in a tournament scenario, I'm not going to try and kill that Stonehorn now because I'm already past it. He's facing the wrong way, so I'm just going to sort of run away from him. So we kind of agreed to sort of cut things short. But yeah, it was just a really good matchup for me in terms of having few units that I'm able to chaff up. Right, I mean, with the chaff up, though, his faster units, the Stonehorn and the Mournfang, I'm able to outrange and charge those units of ogres with a devastating charge, and just a fantastic matchup for me. The mission was the killing the scoring units, right? So he has to nominate scoring units on my side and nominate scoring units on his side for me to kill. And so after turn 2, I killed all of his scoring units. So I'd sort of got a big. It wasn't a 20-0 actually; it was a 19-1 even with the mission, I think, because there were so many points in that Stonehorn that it didn't quite add up. You know, it only added up to a sort of 16-4 victory, plus the mission ended up at 19-1. So it's game 5, and I'm up against Che's Warriors, and he's got a Demon Prince, Tzeentch Demon Prince, level 4 on Battle Magic with 2 favours and the Dragon Slaying Sword. He's right in the middle, out in the open there, as you can see. There's a level 4 Sorcerer also on Battle Magic with the Puppet and the Spell Familiar, so he's got, you know, 5 spells. Got everything in Battle Magic he wants, really. You know, the 2 Magic Missiles, the 2 Vortexes. 2 times 5 Knights of Khorne, so 2 small units of Chaos Knights. 14 Marauders of Tzeentch with the Sorcerer, also on the right hand side there, so you can see his 2 casters are on the line, and everything else is behind. There's a Warhound Dart. There's 4 Ogres of Khorne with great weapons, 4 Dragon Ogres with great weapons, and 2 Gore-Beast Chariots also on the Mark of Khorne. So it's a tough list, you know, lots of Frenzy, which could play to my advantage, as, you know, the Ogres and the Gore-Beasts are only sort of movement 6, right? So they have to charge everything within 12 inch of them, but they don't have Swift Stride, so they need a 6 on the dice. You can just sort of bait them out within 12 inch, you know, and try and get them to fail a charge. Demon Prince is a bit of worry, because obviously he's Monster Slayer, he's got a 360 charge, he's going to be trying to hunt down my Wyvern from the get-go. Lots of magic missiles will be good against my chaff, which I'm worried about, but, you know, I can lose a fair bit of chaff and still win the game. I dropped my Wyvern down very aggressively on the right-hand side. So in this scenario, this is diagonal deployment, and there's only an 18-inch gap between us, hoping maybe I'll just get the a long bomb charge off on turn 1. And I also roll the Here We Go spell as well, so I can add a bit of charge distance to my roll if I get the spell off. And, you know, so there's a turn 1, potential turn 1 charge, you know, with a 9, a 10 on the dice and 2d6, right, with a reroll, so it's quite tasty. The Demon Prince, I don't get turn 1. The Demon Prince immediately comes across to counter the Wyvern on turn 1. That sort of prevents me from, you know, going straight in. My eyes are on his Sorcerer, right, because his Sorcerer is right there on the line. I'm thinking, right, I've got to go grab him on turn 1. The Dragon Ogres, as you can see them on the left there, they go round that building on the left, which I'm thankful for, actually, because there isn't really enough space in the middle between the impassable terrain. So with this diagonal deployment, it's going to take them a couple of turns to go around that terrain, and I've got enough chaff on my left-hand side there to kind of keep them busy, and hopefully I can sort of smash through the middle before those Dragon Ogres come around, which kind of gives me kind of deja vu from my game 3, right, where the Dragon Ogres also were sort of stuck behind other Chaos units. I didn't have to fight them straight away. And actually, at one point, Fear saved me from Impetuous. So my Wolf Riders had to charge for Impetuous, but then they failed their Fear test and they didn't have to charge, and that gave me an extra bit of chaff that survived until the next turn. So yeah, so my a bit of a cagey affair initially. There's 2 markers on the board that you can see which are the objectives, right? So my Wolf Riders on the right never made it anywhere near that marker because they just got blasted off the board by the magic missiles. My Boars come in the middle, and there's this kind of circle of knights and ogres and Gorby's chariots and everything, which he's kind of waiting for my ball boy to take the bait so he can get a charge off with his multiple sort of frenzied units. My war boss, obviously looking like it's going to go down that right hand side, doesn't take the bait from the Demon Prince. It ends up going towards the middle with my boars, right? So I'm putting everything in one basket, trying to get this central objective first. My boars eventually just move forward, inviting the charge, and the Chaos Knights and the Ogres charge the boars all at once, and I countercharge. And I don't know if Che was expecting it actually, perhaps he forgot I had countercharge, but I end up sort of winning a big combat against the Ogres and Chaos Knights in the middle with the boars on his turn, right? So I'm able to smash through them, restrain, swivel round, and then charge the Demon Prince. And it just kind of, everything kind of clicked into place. I think this was around turn 3 or turn 4. Turn 3, I think. And then, I break his, 2 of his main units on his turn, kill the Demon Prince in my turn. And, I've still got my main units alive. However, he's still got the Gorby's chariots there. He's still got the lots of magic flying around, and I end up losing the ball boy unit right on turn 6 from Gorby's chariots, and it was the only time I lost that ball boy unit throughout the whole tournament. So it was a shame to give away the points right at the end there. Neither of us got the objective in the end because I lost my scoring unit right at the end, and I hunted down his scoring units that were near the other objective, the other unit of Chaos Knights and the Marauders, and so it was a very tight draw. I think it finished 11-9 to me, but very, very tight at the end there, and a really enjoyable way to finish off the tournament. So the Cardiff Twin Sentinels tournament comes to a close. I finished 6th overall out of 44 players, which I'm very happy with. It was very narrow at the top there, actually. So I think it was only 2 points away from 8th and 3rd position, right? And my buddy Drew finished 8th, equal points with myself. So they're very close at the top there. I had 4 wins and 1 loss overall, 2 big wins and 2 narrow wins, and a quite a heavy loss. So second place was a Brett's list with no magic, lots of Peg Knights and the Green Knight and so on. First place was Tomb Kings, with Ashabtis with bows, skeletons and casket and all the rest of it. I didn't play either of those players who came first and second, but as I mentioned, I played Chris, who's Orcs and Goblins, who came third. And yeah, really, really enjoyable tournament. I think it worked well, particularly because of the missions. And there hasn't been many other old world tournaments with the missions involved, and it just made it just less filth, really, because obviously you need the scoring units, and so at the list building phase of the game, people are having to factor that in and not just take a bunch of dragons and stuff. Just really enjoyable. The Cardiff arena there, Firestorm Games, really nice venue. I'll put some pictures up here so you can see some pictures of the venue. Great way to open my old world tournament experiences. In terms of the list, in terms of the Nomadic Waaagh, really fun to play, really enjoying it so far. It doesn't feel like a normal list that I play Warhammer with in 8th edition, because I don't have any big blocks of infantry. Obviously it's all cav, it's all fast moving, so all impetuous, so you're having to move forward and charge things, which is always fun. I'm hoping to drop the Wolf Riders in my next tournament, where you don't have these secondary objectives and I don't necessarily need scoring units. I'm just trying to smash up the opponent's army. I'm hoping to have more chariots and fewer Wolf Riders, maybe a few tweaks on the magic items, but it'll be pretty much the same list that I take to the next tournament. So if you've listened this far, please hit the like and subscribe. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you think about the Nomadic Waaagh list and the tournament scene for Old World so far. And I'll catch you on the next one. Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.